Not content with your content? You've come to the right place. The Discontent Show with Joe Kuzma. Every brand starts with a story. Here's how you can grow your business by sharing it. Now, with today's topic, the host of The Discontent Show, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Discontent Show. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am here, as per the usual, to give you some content marketing hints and tips, a little bit of tricks of the trade, and one of those that, I don't really talk about too much, and you're listening to one right now, is podcasting, and in particular, a good way to really get some reach for your business, whether or not you have a podcast of your own or not, is to be a guest or to host guests, actually. The whole podcast appearance thing is rather big, and it's really no different than any other type of networking where you're reaching out, and maybe even myself here, planning to have a few guests here in future episodes and have some folks come on and talk about certain things within the industry, your niche, or anything like that. And, one thing is that you may think, hey, I'm not that type of person. I don't have a public voice, or I'm not good at public speaking, right? And this is a little different because you could sit even within the comfort of your own home. Oftentimes, this is something like you're going to do, making a phone call, calling into someone, or someone calls into you, whether that's a traditional phone call, through your cell phone, whether that's done through a service such as Skype or Google Hangouts that's done, internet phone calls. FaceTime, if you have an Apple product, is very much the same thing. Facebook Messenger also has, these voice call or capabilities these days. So there's multiple ways that you could do this, and either you're capturing the audio or the person on the other end is, and then all of a sudden you're a guest or you're having guests, and it's pretty cool because depending on the podcast you're on, there's no denying this. Podcasts are huge right now. They just keep exploding in growth, doubling over year after year after year. I really started to get into this specific field with podcasting, not here with this program, although this program's been running for about a year now. I've been doing this for maybe about 5-6 years now, and pretty much anyone that I've turned on to doing podcasting has seen some type of success. If you're familiar with a sales funnel, this is just another thing that leads someone, down that road or up the ladder, or whichever way you want to invert that pyramid to, being an advocate of yours or making a sale. Or in the, on the flip side here, since we're talking about appearing on podcasts or having someone appear on your own, this is, you're getting other types of advocates. You're networking with people maybe within your own industry, maybe not necessarily competitors. Sometimes maybe you are, right? Which is, kind of unique in and of itself if there is a benefit for either one of you. So why would you want to appear on a podcast or vice? I'm just going to, kind of make this, I think, appearing on someone else's podcast, because I'm going to come from the assumption that most of you that are listening might not have your own, but this also applies for you to have guests on your own program as well, should you host your own podcast. So why would you want to do something like this? Well, I don't know how you feel about the whole public speaking thing. Sometimes people get the jitters, it could be nervous, but eventually this kind of breaks down into maybe almost something like a phone call. You get very comfortable with it, and when it's done, you may have an opportunity for a very vast audience. And it all depends on the platform. It depends on the program you're appearing on. But, there's several podcasts that I help manage that they reach anywhere from 500 people to 5,000 people per episode. And I couldn't imagine if I were actually doing this in front of, can you imagine like a studio or like a theater, like a play, even like a seminar. Let's say you have a conference room, you're at a Holiday Inn Express or something like that, or a Marriott, and you're in front of 500 people, 2,000 people. I mean, you would beg to get that kind of, reach even on social media with certain kinds of posts and things like that. So podcasts are pretty big, and there's a lot of things, I tend to neglect my own blog, which is very bad on me, and some of the other stuff. I just get busy. I mean, I know, practice what you preach, right? But I at least try and stick with the podcast. I find it a little easier just in the sake of when I'm doing podcasting, I could infinitely say more things than I'm capable of writing. Any type of written format, people tune out kind of more quickly. You don't get the same kind of rapport, and it almost feels like I could stuff 3 or 4 times more content into a short window than I would, in the same amount of time it would take me to write an article. So, whether you have your own podcast or not, I mean, there's no denying the type of size audience that you're going to get. And, depending on the product and whatever that you sell, there's a large portion of these people that are going to be interested maybe in what you're buying, or maybe even following you in your other endeavors, whether that be on another social media platform or your own podcast if you happen to have it. Now, I know what you're saying. And I just said this, sometimes I say face for radio. That's because I don't put my face on video. But to be completely honest, sometimes these things are being recorded. I talk about this the same way with blogging. You can almost record a podcast just about anywhere. And some things can be unsightly. I don't want to have to worry about shaving, ladies doing your hair and makeup and stuff like that. So in audio format, hey, you don't have to worry like you would with video or a personal appearance about getting all dressed up. And, I'm not sitting here in my pajamas, but that's just my own personal preference. You certainly could, right? If you feel like you don't have like a certain type of personality, you think your voice is boring, these are all self-defeating principles. If you're an expert in your field and someone is interested in hearing you, someone's interested in having you as a guest, go, because this is only going to help you in the long run. Don't start with the stuff like where, hey, nobody's going to be interested in things that I have to say. What if I draw a blank? Well, if it's not like a live program, such as this one that's on demand, oftentimes the podcast producer, such as myself, we can go in, edit out any kind of dead space, any kind of mistakes and things of that nature. It's all going to depend on how good your podcast producer is. And if you're doing it yourself and you're recording a guest and they're rather bad, you'll have to just kind of keep those things in mind and see what kind of time you want involved. But those are things when you appear on someone else's program, you really don't have to worry about. All you have to do is show up. You got to just do the Nike method. Just do it. Just go and do it. The other thing too is some of the worst podcasts that I think I've done, where I thought I was dry, I thought I was boring, I thought the content or the concept was terrible. It turns out that they turn out being some of the best rated or best reviewed programs as well. So you really just like trying to create something that goes viral on the internet, whether it's like a meme or a video or some other type of social media post, you really don't know. A lot of times you're going to be able to you're more of a perfectionist about your own stuff. You're not going to, what would you say, point it out, or somebody else wouldn't point out the same things that you're going to point out. So don't worry about that. Even if you blank, even if you're worried about, you hear me sometimes, I try to stay away from some of that. Go on radio, particularly talk radio, go on Sirius XM or something like that. It takes some practice, and you know what? I'm very informal many times where, there we go. I almost went and did it again because it's very conversational. So you don't have to worry about that. You could just don't worry about it. If you end up listening to any of that stuff, like your regular terrestrial radio broadcasts or satellite radio and anything like of that nature, you're going to notice, I noticed this with sports talk. People, they talk the same exact way, but you only notice if you're trying to notice. So don't make a mountain out of a molehill. You'll be okay with that. And again, if there's anything with like any type of dead air or anything like that. Usually a good podcast producer, such as myself. I'm going to throw that out there again because this is something that I do, that I am available for hire if you're interested in getting a podcast going. So don't hesitate to reach out to me over at the website and stuff. The contact stuff's at the end of the show, so I won't repeat that. I'm going to stick to the point right here. I just had to do a little plug there, though, so apologies. But, some people, I know I'm going to get questions. Where can I get, this is the thing. You run a show like this, right? And you're talking about content marketing stuff that you do. I'm for hire for all of these things that I speak on. That's how I learned all of it. That's how I became pretty much, I hate saying I'm an expert in the field because it sounds like I'm being, too confident or too conceited. But again, that's noticing your own flaws. And sometimes you have to realize that, there's things that you're good at and there's things that you're not. I happen to be good at these things, and folks come and ask me, where can I go and get this done? And I'll just kind of raise my hand over here and say, hey, right here, this is what I do. So, and now that you're convinced that I'm going to go do this, but I don't know where to start. Okay. How do you get invited onto a show? Sometimes people will invite you, and this may come after you're already going out and doing some of this on your own. You've already been a guest on some other shows, or you have an established podcast of your own. So, you want to look for relevant podcasts. It doesn't necessarily mean the most popular, but I talk about this. So what are my examples usually, like plumbing or pizza or anything like that? If you're talking about, talk about pizza, it might be okay for somebody that talks about burgers, right? Or a food podcast or something like that. But you don't want to go on the guy who's talking about home improvement and talk about pizza. Although home improvement people might like pizza. So you have to see what's a relevant fit there and see if it makes sense for you. Because, if you're talking to people about something that they have zero, you're going on a show for a specific interest. You don't want to go to one where they're not interested in what you have to say. I follow a certain NFL team, for those of you who know me in my other work, and, I appear sometimes on other NFL team podcasts, opponents, rivals, and things of that nature, especially when they're playing each other, or when it's the off season, people want to know news about it. But I don't appear on a baseball podcast, or I don't appear on a basketball podcast, or I don't appear on, a boating or cycling podcast, because those folks would have even if they have 5,000 listeners, it's better for me to go on a show where it's NFL fans or specifically fans of the team that I cover and talk to 500 of them versus 5,000 of people that, they're doing swimming or boating or something like that, and they have zero interest in football altogether, let alone my team. So you're kind of, talking to a wall in that case if you're not looking for something that's relevant to what you need to speak, what your topic is and what you speak about and what it is you're an expert at. You want to, one of the suggestions is maybe to start early. This is January. I think that's the reason why I got a deluge of requests early on. New year, everyone's looking to fill up a schedule. Some of these recommendations when I was looking around at this for, appearance tips or being a guest on a podcast, they're telling you, you may need to be up to anywhere from 6 to 9 months in advance. It all depends on who you're getting a hold of. Of course, everyone has an editorial calendar. If you've been listening to this program long enough, you know how much I advocate for one in order to keep yourself organized. So, it kind of throws things into disarray. I actually had a guest for this very slot here, and, I always worry, but I got to let them know, hey, this may take a week or two before this ends up being up. And most people are usually pretty cool with that. And it also gives you some breathing room, too, because you're not racing to put this out there. You're not racing to be a guest. So just keep in mind on their end, they're going to be very much maybe like me, and it might take a little bit before you get in there. You find yourself on the same schedule. A lot of folks, I even talk to people worldwide, so we're dealing with people that are in it's a different day, when you're talking about Australia, for example. Some good friends there, talking about the football stuff, and we have to work at night in order to accommodate them because it's early morning for them. You're going to have those differences. Not everyone's going to be in the same time zone, like an East Coast time or West Coast time. So just keep that in mind when it comes to scheduling, and don't get discouraged with that. And if you're kind of cold contacting someone too, you might, this is like a pitch. It's no different than any type of sales pitch. You kind of want to know how you know them, if you've been listening to them, if you've met them in person. You want to share some knowledge about not only what they talk about, but what you would like to talk about, any type of your expertise that would interest their audience. And, anything else that could build your reputation or credibility, any links to your websites or your other work. And, and that's about all you could do. You could offer that to them and see if it goes anywhere. And it's going to in some cases. In other cases, there's some people who they like to stay locked in their silo, and they want to be on their own and run solo. And, I run solo only because I don't have a guest. I'm actually looking into a cooperative right now with another business partner of mine, and potentially that's going to be a whole other program on top of this Discontent show, believe it or not, just so we can have some back and forth banter. So it kind of will break it up a little bit. But sometimes doing things individually isn't always the best. Some people just like to go that route. So you just have to understand, this is what makes people, right? And, the best things you could do is going forward. If you get the yes, then you kind of want to have a guideline on what you're going to talk about. You're going to maybe want to know if there's any type of specific questions that they're going to ask you, or any specific answers that they would like to ask you, or that their audience would like to know about you, or whatever it is that you may be speaking about. So if you're selling a product, they're going to want to know about it. You might want to come up with some questions, and of course some of the answers too, ahead of time. I think the answers are more important if you can't shoot these things off the top of your head. If I'm appearing when it comes to talking about my football team and there's certain statistics, I don't necessarily want to get those things wrong, because then it kind of destroys your credibility. That could be, however many touchdowns somebody scored in a specific year. So I usually have those things up on some type of screen or device near me, or you could print them out on paper. The only problem with paper is if you're near a microphone or you're on a phone and you start shuffling it, it doesn't sound too professional, right? So, even in doing this program, I have a bullet list of things, and believe it or not, I just make like a bullet list. It says, literally right now, it just says questions, answers. And the rest of it, usually, that's just so I don't forget to cover that bullet point or topic. So just be a little bit prepared. If you do this as your own type of podcast, you're going to field those same type of things. It's going to be a collaboration. So you have some questions. Sometimes the people that are on there don't want to know. Sometimes I don't want them to necessarily know, unless it's something that's going to really trip them up and confuse them, and then make the whole program or the episode awkward in some way. So don't try and be sneaky, but at the same time, a spontaneous answer may be better, and it's more natural fit for your podcast, more of a natural fit for an audio program, as opposed to if you're reading, off a script. And we've had some bad ones. I had one, several months ago where I think the poor person, I feel bad even mentioning this, they eased up, but I think they were very nervous at first, and there were long pauses in between almost every other word or sentence. And, having to be editing this, I think there was something like, it was the most edits I've ever had on a program, and it was only like maybe a 20-minute segment. I think I had close to 70 or 80 cuts of dead space in between it. And, that's hectic for someone that's got to actually work with that stuff. But try not to do that to anyone. Don't robot read off of a sheet of paper. When we say, questions or answers, sometimes the questions you could read them, but you want to be very conversational still with that. And don't forget, I mentioned a sales funnel before. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's usually, people meet you at the top. It's a very wide cast net, and not everyone's going to hang along for the ride. And at the very bottom, where it gets to the tip, those are the people that are going to make you're going to make a sale. They're going to buy your service or product. So you want to be able to plug on the program that you're being a guest of, or even the person that's coming on as a guest, be a good host and ask them, where can we find this? Where can we, learn more information? Have them, plug a website, or even if it's like a small, just a website address straight to their sales stuff. Anything like that. Find you on Twitter, find you on Facebook, find you on LinkedIn. Those type of things are invaluable. And oftentimes, if you're the one producing this show, if you can, put those into your show notes as well. And that's only going to help the reach of the person that's the guest, or provide these things to the program that you're appearing on. I hope this was helpful. This was a little bit different than usual, but I got to thinking about this with all of the different people who've been approaching me to be a guest on this program, and some of them will be showing up here in the coming weeks. Got some very exciting topics, some different ones too, some things that I haven't even talked about, and even for the things that I have, it's always good to have a fresh view or a different opinion, even if it is, my platform, so to speak. There I go, whacking the microphone, right? You see, those type of things, I wouldn't worry about them too much. Some people don't worry about, again, be good. You don't have to worry about great. I haven't said that for a long time on here, but something that I was really hammering and impressing upon people when I first started this program, because I think too many people worry about all these little small imperfections, and then you just don't end up getting anything done. In the case of podcasts, hey, all you got to do is go on. You could use your earbuds with a phone, and it has a little mic built into it, and that's enough for you to be a guest on someone else's program without ever having to produce any type of file. And then guess what? You get to share that on your social media as well, and you're going to help the other person who's having you as a guest. You're going to help that host, that platform, amplify their message too. It is a very nice, it's a very beautiful thing there when that works together, and you both have a common goal of reaching a larger audience, and you kind of pull those resources together. So hope this helps everyone out. If you have any more questions, find me over on my website at joekuzma.com. As always, I encourage listeners out there to be safe, be good, and I'll catch you later. Hi folks, this is Joe Kuzma. No, don't worry, you're not hearing things twice. I'm just here to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening to today's show and being a follower and subscriber of the Discontent Podcast. And I want to remind you that if you're interested in more information about all the various things it is that I do, whether it be about this show, content marketing, or you want to ask a question, you may visit me at joekuzma.com. That's JOEKUZMA.com. Or you can follow me as well on Facebook. Make sure you get the page and not the personal profile. Sorry, it's only for friends and family. Also on Twitter at Joe_Kuzma, LinkedIn or Instagram. Also, don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe, whether that be on iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast provider, so you don't miss out on any of the great episodes that we have. Once again, thank you again for your support, and I look forward, as always, to speaking and interacting with each of you again soon.